Hello, boys and girls. It's Little Red Riding Hood. How are you today? Oh, I'm glad you're having such a great day. Today's Saturday, July 4th, and I hope you're having fun. And thank you for tuning in to Alley Cross by James Patterson. When we left off yesterday, Alex had gone in the house and discovered that the house had been broken into. And now the police are on the way. I wonder what's going to happen. Let's find out. Chapter 6. Once the police got to our house, we had to wait in the kitchen for a long time. Uniformed officers came through first, then a team of crime scene techs and detective Olejnika, who went over the whole place with Dad and Bree. This was all 100% serious, but it was also just like something out of an episode of Law and Order. I watch old repeats of that show any chance I get. So yeah, my radar was definitely on high that night, sucking up every detail. The good news was everybody was okay. The bad news was all our presents had been stolen, including the laptop I wasn't supposed to know I was getting for Christmas. That was a real bummer, but I didn't have to be a detective to know that now wasn't the time to go whining to Dad about it. Because something else was going on. Detective Olejnika spent an extra long time with Dad and Bree upstairs while the crime scene techs worked in the living room. I didn't know what they were talking about up there, but you could just tell there was some kind of secret in the air, or at least I could tell. I wasn't sure if Janie and Damien had picked up on it. Weirdest Christmas ever, Janie said. It was way past midnight by now and her chin was practically on the table. They hadn't brought up their missing presents either. We all knew this was serious. We just couldn't do anything about it. Do you think it was one of those people who've been trashing Dad so bad lately? Damien asked. Could be, Janie said. I mean, it's not like a secret where we live, and Dad's got more than his share of people coming down on him lately. We all do, Damien said. What do you mean? I asked. It's like, for some people, cross is a dirty word now, Damien said. You know, for anyone who thinks Dad's guilty. Guilty of what, though? I asked. He didn't do anything. I mean, I feel bad that Mr. Gang fell down those stairs, but it was an accident. You don't have to tell me that, Damien said. Tell it to all those people who think Dad pushed him, or assaulted him, or both. None of this was making me feel any better, but Damien was right. Those reporters outside the church weren't the only ones giving Dad grief about his trial. Regular people were saying all kinds of messed up stuff about him, too. I know there are a lot of valid reasons people are talking about police brutality these days. Dad knows it, too. There have been way too many problems with it in the past few years, and it brings down the whole community. When a police officer abuses their power, for Dad, it's made this case more complicated. I've seen a ton of people accusing my dad of terrible stuff online, and it was hard to take even though I knew my dad would never do those things. I'd seen it all online, even though I wasn't supposed to be reading it. Either way, I didn't want to just sit there talking anymore. This break-in was the last thing Dad needed right now. With this trial and the real chance that he could go to jail for something that wasn't his fault. He might not be a detective much longer, which is all I ever wanted to be, the best like him. I jerked back from the table, my chair scraping loudly on the floor. I wanted to get a look at the crime scene. I wanted to investigate this thing. Where are you going? Nana asked when I got up from the table. Just to the bathroom, I said and slipped out of the kitchen before she decided to stop. When I got to the living room, the crime scene techs were there, wearing blue gloves and a headlamps, along with black sweatshirts that said ERT on the back in big white letters. The evidence response team. They find all the clues, visible and invisible, that perpetrators leave behind at a crime scene. Then figure out exactly what they mean, like solving a riddle. That's always seemed like a cool job to me. Hey, little dude, you supposed to be in here? One of the guys asked. He was carrying a camera. The other one was working a handheld black light going over every inch of the room. No wonder it was taking so long. I'm good, I said with a smile, like that answered the question. What are you looking for exactly? Fingerprints, mostly, and any other trace of evidence, he said. Find anything? The guy smiled. I don't think I'm supposed to talk to you about this, he said. Sorry about your Christmas, though. It's okay, I said. It really was. A lot of people had it worse, way worse than us, including Gabe. I was guessing. And as long as I was standing there, I figured it couldn't hurt to try another angle with this guy. Can I ask you something else? I said. Depends on what it's about, he told me. Let's say you were looking for a missing person. I said, someone who had disappeared like 3 days ago. What would you do about it? The guy nodded, and it seemed like he really thought for a second. I like how he was treating me like a kid. Well, I'm no detective, I'm just a tech, he said. But if it were me, I'd get it up on the MPD missing persons page. Also, any neighborhood Facebook pages where they can track this stuff. Social media can be your best friend in a case like that, but you need feet on the ground too. What does that mean? I asked. I'd comb the neighborhood, working out from wherever the missing person was last seen, maybe get a team knocking on doors, handing out flyers, that kind of thing. I had about 1 million more questions, but that's as far as I got. Allie, Dad yelled from upstairs. What are you doing down there? Just going to the bathroom, I answered. The crime scene guy smiled, but he didn't bust me. He's no bother, the guy said, as Dad came downstairs. Oh, yes, he is, Dad said. Trust me, this kid's never seen a Sherlock Holmes story or a cop show on TV that he didn't soak up like a sponge. That was true. Like I said, I wanted to be a detective, so I couldn't get enough of anything with mystery or a crime. I also liked books by Walter Mosley, Blue Ballet, Trenton Lee Stewart, Varian Johnson, Agatha Christie, and a bunch of others. But I didn't want to look like a geek in front of the investigators. So I didn't say all that out loud. In any case, Dad told me, you can head up to bed. We're done up there. And it's time to get some sleep. Tomorrow's Christmas, after all. Well, not exactly, I told him. Excuse me? Dad asked. I pointed over at the clock on the hall table. It was just after 1 in the morning by now. It's already Christmas, I said. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of the year. It goes to show how distracted we were that none of us noticed until now. Like Janie said, weirdest Christmas ever. Chapter 7. I didn't stay in bed for long. First, someone had been in our house, in this very room, looking through all my things. Maybe sat on the bed I'm lying in now. It shook me up more than I wanted to admit, and even living with 2 cops didn't make me feel completely safe anymore. Then there was an investigation. How was I going to sleep with about 800 different things running around inside my head? Basically, I had 3 ideas about why someone might have done this. 1, it wasn't one of those people who had already decided Dad was a dirty cop. 2, it was just some random burglar, the kind that happens all the time everywhere. 3, it had something to do with Gabe. I know that sounds crazy, and I didn't even know what the connection might be, but it just seemed like a pretty big coincidence that this happened 3 days after he disappeared without a trace. Maybe he was kidnapped by the same people who robbed our house, or maybe Gabe was even involved in somehow. Dad always told me never to rule out a possible connections. I shook my head. The Gabe I knew was a good kid. He never so much as lied about anything. So the idea of him doing this was a definite long shot, if it was true. It'd have to be for a really desperate reason. Meanwhile, it was coming up on 2 in the morning, but Dad and Bree were still downstairs. A second detective had shown up, and they were all talking in low voices. Whatever their secret was, it had to be something big. And the longer it went on, the more I wanted to know what it was. I got out of bed and snuck into the hallway to see what I could find out. In my house, there are a few secrets only I know. Like, for instance, if you stick to the left side of our stairs and put your weight on the banister, you can keep them from creaking the whole way down. And then if you sit on the fifth step from the bottom, you can hear what people are saying in the living room without anyone knowing you're there. And what I heard next blew my mind. Did you already call this in to the desk sergeant? Detective Alenka asked. Yeah, that's it. Reported and registered. You said it was a Glock 19 and a Glock 22? Is that right? The new detective asked. That's right, Bree answered. Alex still carries a .19 and a 22 is mine. They were both secured, but it wouldn't take much to get inside those lockboxes with the right tools. Now my head was spinning. Whoever had robbed us hadn't just gotten away with a few electronics. They'd stolen 2 guns, 2 police weapons, which was even less like Gabe than ever. I could barely imagine him breaking into the house, much less carrying around a couple of real Glocks. And now they're out on the street somewhere, Dad said. God only knows what'll happen to them next. Don't beat yourself up about it, Detective Alink told him. It's not like you were going to bring your duty weapons to church. Even so, this will be public information by tomorrow, Dad went on. Somebody's bound to pick up on it. I've got more reporters on my butt these days than dog has fleas. I didn't mean to laugh at that, but Dad caught me off guard. It was just a little laugh, but enough to burst me if I wasn't careful. So I stayed low and started back up the stairs as stealthily as I could go. Then when I heard Dad get up and start coming my way, I turned around like I was just headed down for the first time. Smooth, I know. Dude, he said when he saw me, you're supposed to be in bed. I can't sleep, I told him. It's Christmas. Exactly, Dad. He just smiled at that. I think maybe he was taking it easy on me with the robbery and everything that had happened. Just tell me what's going on, I said. Don't you worry about it. Come on, Dad. There's must be something you can tell me. I didn't mention the guns because I didn't want him to know how much I had heard. Dad took a deep breath. Then he came halfway up the stairs, met me in the middle, and we sat down right there. Here's as much as I'll say, he told me. Our house wasn't the only one that got hit tonight. There were 4 other break-ins around the neighborhood. I don't know what I was expecting to hear, but it wasn't that. Again, my mind went right back to Gabe. Could he have done all this? Not likely, but not impossible. Some part of me hoped there was a chance anyways. At least then it would mean he was still around and that something even worse hadn't happened to him. At the same time, it also meant this probably wasn't done by one of those random people who hated Dad. So much for what happened with Mr. Gang. Otherwise, it would have just been our house that got robbed and not a whole string of them. That was worth something anyway. Is there any kind of pattern to the break-ins? I asked. The first thing they do with this kind of case is look for patterns. Like if the robber had gone in through the back at every house or stolen the same kind of stuff each time. That's all you're getting, Dad said. Now scoot. Where were the other houses? I asked. Was it anyone we know? Good night, Ollie. Dad, I tried again. Ollie, he said. He just switched over to his enough voice, which is basically like the sound of a big red stop sign. I knew I wasn't getting any more after that. So I said goodnight, and I took myself back to bed. Not that I expected to get any sleep. I opened my copy of the Parker Inheritance to read for a while, but I just stared at the pages instead. I was too caught up putting all these different pieces together, and I was starting to realize something between Dad's trial and the break-in at our house and the stolen police weapons. he was going to have less time to think about Gabe's case than ever before. Bree, too. In other words, this was on me now. Not that I thought I could out-cop the cops, but if I didn't at least try, and then if something really bad happened to Gabe, I was going to wonder for the rest of my life if there was something I could have done. I didn't just want to help anymore. Now I needed to, whatever it took. Alex Cross. After the detectives went home and Bree took herself to bed, Alex Cross trudges up to his office in the attic. There was no sense trying to sleep that night. Might as well try to get a few things done, he thought. Sitting at his desktop computer, Alex surfed around for the latest coverage on his upcoming trial. A quick Google search turned up page after page of results. Most of it was accurate enough, but it was too easy to find plenty of lies and misinformation too. The worst part of it, as usual, came from a blog called COP, which stood for Call Out the Police. It was a site exclusively focused on police officers who had been accused of crimes themselves. So far, nobody had come after Alex harder than they had. There was no story about the stolen guns yet, but they'd already posted a video from outside St. Anthony's Church that night. The headline read, "Detective Cross had Christmas Eve meltdown in front of family." The story that followed was as nasty as the headline itself. Alex gripped the edge of his desk as he read through, just to keep from throwing his computer right out the window. His real concern, though, was the kids. Alex could take whatever the press wanted to throw at him, but there was no way to protect Allie, Janie, and Damien from all of it. What was he going to do? Erase the internet? Can you erase the internet, folks? I don't think so. So remember, whatever you put out on the internet, it stays out there forever. And even if you think you've erased it, you really haven't. Somebody else can find it. Allie especially would be all over this. He was probably lying awake right now, looking at the same online trash his old man was reading, one floor up. It hurt Alex in his heart just thinking about it. And it wasn't just his kids getting knocked around either. Two families had been affected by the accident in two very different ways. If Alex's trial didn't go well, he could be looking at jail time. But at least the Crosses were all together under one roof for now. It was the Yangs whose holiday had truly been ruined. Stanley Yang lay in a coma at Washington VA Medical Center that night, while his son, Tyler, was being held without bail at the D.C. Central Detention Facility. That put the rest of the Yangs at home on Christmas Eve, wondering when or if they'd ever be a whole family again. There wasn't much Alex could do about that, but he didn't have one thing in mind. In fact, it had already been set in motion. Alex didn't really care if he got him into hot water, and as soon as the sun started to come up, he put his plan into action. Alex Cross again. It was 6:25 a.m. when Johnson Sampson's text came through. "Sampson, almost there. You ready for me? Cross, be right there." Sampson was Alex's best friend since way back in the day. He was also a fellow cop and at the moment a volunteered Christmas elf, even if he did top out a 6'9". Alex tiptoed down to the front door where he let himself out into the crisp December morning. He opened the car trunk and took out a heavy red cloth bag stuffed with gifts, slinging it over his back, Santa style. "Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, bud," Sampson called from the back, his black Explorer, as he pulled up the curb. "You too," Alex answered. He dropped the red bag into Sampson's back seat, then opened the passenger door and got in. "You're coming?" Sampson asked. "I thought you were going to hang back." "I need to see this through," Alex said. "It's been a rough night." "All right then," Sampson answered. "Let's put the sleigh in gear." As they drove the quiet city streets from the Capitol Hill section of southeast D.C. towards the Yangs' northeast D.C. neighborhood, Alex filled his friend in on the break-ins, the neighborhood robberies, and the stolen weapons from his house. Sampson gave a low whistle. "Some Christmas," he said. I'm really sorry, man. It's mostly the kids I'm worried about, Alex told him. Damien's confused. Janie's afraid of all the people coming down on me lately, and Allie's got this friend who's gone missing on top of everything else. You talking about that Quills kid? Sampson asked. That's right, Gabriel. Alex answered. Allie's pretty down about it, but he also tends to get a little obsessive. That kid's gonna run the world one of these days, Sampson said with a dark smile. I get tired of just thinking about how fast his brain runs. It was true, Alex thought. For better or worse, Allie's mind was always running, always firing on every cylinder. He was an intelligent, creative kid, but he also tended to fixate on whatever was in front of him, at which point he was more pit bull than wise old owl. That came with a tendency to make overconfident and sometimes rash decisions, which was the part that worried Alex the most. Here we are, Sampson said, coming to a stop on North Capitol Street. As per the plan, he'd parked several doors down from the Yang's family home. You want me to ring the doorbell or just drop the goodies and run? See if you can hear anyone inside first, Alex said. Then do whatever makes sense. Sampson hopped out and pulled the Santa sack from the back seat. Inside the bag were toys, clothes, a huge box of Christmas candy, and gift cards for Walmart and Safeway. It wasn't going to change anyone's life, but it was something anyway. As Alex watched, Sampson carried the bag up to the gang's front porch. He paused there for a second, listening, then rang the bell and hurried back down toward the car. Alex slouched a little deeper in his seat. He didn't want to be seen here. He just wanted to see. A second later, 8-year-old Leanne Yang opened the front door. She was adorable in pale yellow pajamas and a pair of red and gold bunny ears. When she saw the bag waiting on the porch, her eyebrows knit together in confusion. But as soon as she yanked it open to look inside, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. Mama! Grandma! The girl shouted. Santa came! And for the first time that Christmas, Alex Cross smiled. And that's the end. And so now Alex is trying to make the Yangs, who their son's in jail, and the father is in the hospital, trying to make it better. Is he going to make it better, or is he going to make it worse? Let's find out tomorrow. Happy 4th of July, and I'll see you tomorrow, Sunday, at 4 o'clock.